A couple of years ago, I was hanging out with my friend. It was a Friday night, and I was a senior in high school at the time. My parents were gone, and my friend Riley was over at my house. We ordered a pizza at probably between 8 and 9 p.m. I know that it was dark outside, and we were both really hungry. We were just in my parents' living room, talking and watching something on TV. We were the only people home at the time. The neighborhood my parents live in is pretty nice. It's not super wealthy or anything, but it's known to be very safe. I knew many of the neighbors, and I had never known of anything bad to happen there. So about 20 minutes after we ordered the pizza, there was a knock at the front door. I got up and walked to the front door and opened it. It was the pizza delivery guy, and he had the pizza with him. I got it and paid the guy, but before he left, he said something to me that was odd. He said that he didn't know if I knew this or not, but he saw a guy hiding in the bushes on the side of our house. I said that I was not aware of it. The pizza guy then said that he just wanted to let me know, and then he left. I didn't really know what to make of this. I walked back into the living room and set the pizza down. I told Riley about what the pizza delivery guy said. Both of us decided to go and check. First, we went to the side of the house from the inside. We walked over to my brother's bedroom, which had a window that looked out to that side of the house. My brother was gone, so it was empty. When we looked out of the window, we couldn't really see anything though. It didn't have a great view, and if there was a man hiding there, he would still be out of sight. Then we both left the house and walked outside. We used the flashlights from our phones to shine them down to the side of the house when we got there. We did have several large bushes that would be fairly easy to hide in. When we shined over the bushes though, we didn't see anybody. I didn't want to go right up to them and look though. I got a little bit closer and shined the light again. I could see much better now and didn't see anybody. I felt confident enough that if the man was still hiding there, I would have either seen him or he would have moved. After that, we both went back inside. It was a really weird thing. I had never known anything like that to happen around the neighborhood before. We tried thinking of potential reasons for a person to be there at this hour, but I couldn't think of any. We tried our best to forget about it now that we thought whoever it was probably now gone. Just to be safe though, we decided to get up and make sure that the back door was locked and no windows were left open or anything. The back sliding door, which led to the patio, was unlocked, so we locked it, but all the windows were shut. Afterwards, we had the pizza and watched TV for probably the next 20 minutes or so. Everything was going fine, and we started to forget about the guy. But that was when we both saw somebody pass by the living room window really quick. Both of us saw just the end of it and didn't get a good look at the person. But somebody was out there. It was really creepy. We both got up and went over to the window and looked out. We couldn't see the guy anymore though. He had disappeared either behind a tree or another bush, or to one of the sides of the house. I wasn't quite sure what to do. Would he actually leave, or should we call the police on him? Riley and I stood around the living room with our eyes fixed on the front window. That's when we heard the noise of the back sliding door starting to open, but it stopped due to the door being locked. We couldn't see it from where we were, but we both walked over to where we could get a view. By then, whoever was there was not in sight. I turned on the back light, which was for the patio, and had been off. When it went on, just for a second, we both saw the man running away. He disappeared behind a few trees and was headed towards the direction of our next door neighbor's backyard. Whoever this guy was who was prowling around was up to no good. We just hoped that he wouldn't come back. My parents got back home only about 15 minutes later. We told them everything, and for the rest of the night we were on high alert, but I don't think the guy ever came back. He must have run off for good that last time. I really don't know what he was doing though, but the one thing I do know is that I'm really glad that we locked that sliding door, or else the guy would have been inside the house with us. This is something that happened in the fall of 2019 when I worked as a pizza delivery driver. I had the job for only 3 months. I would drive around the area near where I lived sort of and just deliver pizzas. I got a decent amount of money in tips usually, which was nice. I would also work late into the night sometimes. On one occasion, it was a Saturday night and I was working until 3 a.m. That's the time that our pizza place closed, and we would usually get orders right up until then just about every week. I had a delivery to make a little bit after 2 a.m. on that night. It was in an area that I had been to before, and I headed out. It took me maybe 10 minutes to drive to the location. When I got there, I parked on the side of the street on what was a typical residential neighborhood. There were houses all over the place, and I took the pizza out of my car. I began walking up the driveway to the house that I was supposed to deliver to. When I got up to the front door, I rang the doorbell and waited. The pizza had not been paid for yet, so I had to collect the money. This house in particular was not the nicest looking house on the street, but it wasn't terrible. Finally, the door opened and a man answered. He looked to be in his 50s and was sort of big with a long mustache. He wore an old-looking white t-shirt, and I could see that inside of his house did not look nice at all. Things seemed really messy and disorganized. The first thing that the guy said was asking me if I wanted to come inside. I said no thanks and told him how much the pizza was. He got his wallet out of his back pocket and then started going through his cash. As he was flipping through his dollar bills, he told me again to come inside the house. I really didn't want to, and I said that I was good. The guy was taking his time paying, and it was getting really uncomfortable by the second. Finally, the man handed me the money for the pizza. No tip, but I didn't even care anymore. I took it and handed him the pizza box. Then I immediately started heading back for my car parked out front. I walked down the steps and back into the driveway. It was really dark, and there were no streetlights nearby. There were also no lights on the guy's property either. About halfway back to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. I looked over my shoulder and saw the guy. He was walking behind me about 30 feet back. I walked faster and reached the end of the driveway. Then I got to my car and got inside as quickly as possible. When I closed my door, I looked and saw the man arriving at the other side. I quickly hit the lock button before the man attempted to open the passenger side door. He then went back and tried opening the rear passenger side door, which was also now locked. I put the car into drive and left. I don't know what that guy wanted, but it was really suspicious. He didn't say anything at all. When I've told this story to friends, a couple of times they've said, maybe he just wanted to give you a tip that he forgot. But he could have spoken up at any time and told me. He didn't say anything. And why would he just try to open my door? And something about the guy was off for sure. The way he invited me in his house a couple of times was really creepy. I'm just happy that I left when I did. This is the bizarre story of one of the pizza deliveries that I made. I worked for Domino's as a delivery driver for one summer when I was in college. I was working one night when I had a routine delivery to make. It was a little bit later, but not that late, maybe like 10 p.m. I drove out to an area where I will just say is not the nicest of neighborhoods. The house I was making a delivery to, I remember, was on a sort of busier street, but there was a sidewalk out front and then a hill going up to the houses. After arriving, I parked on the side of the road, got the pizza, and left my vehicle. Immediately after I got out, I saw a man walking down the sidewalk about 20 feet away. He was passing by, and I started to head up the sidewalk and go up to the house. The man got much closer to me, and he then stopped me and said that he needed to ask me a quick question. I stopped and asked him what his question was. He asked me if I was a pizza delivery driver, and I said yes. Then the man asked me for a piece of pizza. I laughed and said, no, I have to deliver this pizza right now. That response was not so funny to the man, though. His body language changed in anger in an instant. He then walked right up to me, and I tried to begin walking up to the house. The man grabbed my arm, though, and then reached for the pizza and tried grabbing that. I did my best to stop him, but the pizza ended up falling to the ground in the struggle. The pizza, inside the box, fell out of the insulated pizza delivery bag. The man raced over to it, and to my surprise, he stomped on it. He looked at me and cursed at me as he stood on the pizza now. I stood there in disbelief, amazed and also terrified of this man. I was thinking that he just had to be crazy. Then I figured that I needed to get out of there. One pizza was not worth it, but in that moment, my conscience got the better of me. I decided to walk up to the house and tell whoever had ordered the pizza what had happened. We could deliver another pizza to them, but obviously it would take a while longer. I felt that I owed them the explanation, though. Meanwhile, the man was still standing there with the pizza. He did not follow me when I went up to the house, which I was glad to see. I knocked on the door, and when the owner answered, I told him what had happened. You couldn't really see down to the sidewalk from where we were. The man who answered the door seemed really confused, and I can't blame him. But he wasn't too mad. He said he would like us to bring him another pizza. I started to walk back to my car. When I got down to the sidewalk again, though, I didn't see the guy where he had been before. The pizza was still on the ground, though, but as I approached my vehicle, I just barely saw him. He was crouched down, hiding behind the driver's side of my car. I quickly turned around and started walking back up to the guy's house. I didn't want to go close to that weird guy again. When I got about halfway, I stopped and I looked back down to my car. I saw the guy punch at my driver's window. This was really bad. I ran back up to the guy's house and told him what was happening. Then I called the police. I waited on the guy's front porch until the police got there, only about 5 minutes later. When they did, the man was still there, trying to get into my car somehow. He didn't, and I heard a bunch of yelling, and the guy tried fighting one of the cops, which did not go well for him. In the end, I was finally able to get back to my car and leave. The man had not caused any major damage, which was good, but he did cause a few minor dents to my vehicle. I'm not sure if the customer got another pizza at all after that, because my boss let me go home. This happened just a few months ago. I was at home one night by myself and I ordered a pizza. For a little more details, I'm a 26-year-old female and live in a 2-bedroom house by myself. This was at about 7 p.m. when I ordered. It was a local pizza place that I got sometimes. About 15 minutes later, there was a knock at my front door. I answered it and there was a man standing on my front step with a pizza box. The guy delivering it was sort of short and had long, dark, stringy hair. I opened the door to him, paid, accepted the pizza, and then the guy left. Then I went inside. It was a very normal and average interaction. Over the next couple of hours, I hung out at home, having the pizza, watching TV, and going on my phone. At about 11 p.m., I started to get ready for bed, but it was around that same time when there was a knock on my front door. Now, this was really strange because of the fact that it was so late at night. I don't think anybody had ever knocked on my door so late. Before answering it, I decided to look through the living room window. When I did, I saw a man, and I quickly recognized him. It was the pizza delivery guy from earlier, but he wasn't wearing his pizza clothes anymore. He was wearing a black jacket and jeans. I wondered what he was doing here, but as I was looking at him through the window, he looked over and saw me. I jumped back out of instincts. I really didn't want to answer the door. After he saw me, he knocked again. I had a bad feeling about it. This was just too sketchy. I really didn't want to answer the door, so I went back over to the window. I unlocked and slid up one of the living room windows. The man looked over again. Now it was just a window screen, so I could talk to the guy and he would hear me. I asked what he wanted. He didn't answer me, but instead started walking over to the window. When he got within 5 feet, I backed up and shut the window. I saw the guy motioning for me to lift it up again, but I didn't. He was being way too weird. After standing at my window for a while, he finally turned back around and walked away. I watched him go back into the street and I was glad to see him gone. I went back to getting ready for bed after that. But when I got into my bedroom, my cell phone rang. I did not recognize the number, so I didn't answer it. But whoever had called left me a voicemail. I decided to listen to it. When I did, I heard a man say that he was outside, and if I didn't let him in, he was going to break in. Obviously, this had to be the same guy. I decided to call him back. When I called, he answered instantly. I asked him what he wanted. He told me to let him in the house, and I asked him why. He told me to just do it. Then he hung up on me. Of course, I wasn't going to. Instead, I called the police. I told them what was going on, and then went into my bathroom and locked the door. I didn't know if the man was going to actually try to break in or not. I did my best to distract myself from the situation as I waited for the police to get there. When they did arrive, the man was gone. I told the police everything that I knew. The good thing is that it was easy for them to locate the man because I knew his job. I could also describe him and I had his phone number. After that, I haven't been bothered by him since. I used to work as a pizza delivery driver a few years back. It was a good job that I really enjoyed at the time. It was much better for me than some of the other jobs that I've had over the years. and the pay was surprisingly good. But I did have one terrifying experience working there. It all happened very late on one Saturday night. It was probably like 1 o'clock in the morning. Things had been very quiet. Some people ordered pizzas that late, but not a whole lot typically. I had one delivery, but then didn't get one for a while. The next one that I had was across town, almost 10 minutes away. I drove there and arrived at an apartment complex. This was at the type of apartments where all of the units have doors leading outside. They were not very big and not very nice either. I parked my car and walked down a very dark walkway to the unit I was supposed to deliver to. It was around the corner of the building and on the far end. Just being there felt sort of creepy. It was very dark and quiet. I knocked on the door and waited for somebody to answer. Nobody did though. About a minute went by and I knocked again, this time louder than before. Then the door started to open up, but I didn't see anybody. It was like whoever was opening the door hid behind it as they swung it open. I expected somebody to come out from behind the door, but nobody did. The door was now just open and I looked into the apartment. All of the lights were off, which was also strange. I could see what looked like the kitchen with a table and a couple of chairs. I couldn't see much else though. It was just too dark. I said, "Pizza delivery," with a shaky voice. Nobody answered me. The pizza was not paid for, so I needed somebody to answer. I actually started to walk inside the apartment. Looking back, I really don't know why I did. I took like one step in. Everything was very quiet. When I was halfway inside, I heard breathing coming from right behind the door. Somebody was hiding behind it. Immediately, I backed up. I set the pizza on the ground and I took off running back to my car. I didn't look back and left. I paid for that pizza with my own money because there was no way I was waiting around to see whoever was there. I guess that's one way to get a free pizza. That was my creepiest experience working as a pizza delivery driver. When I was 17 years old, I got my first job ever. It was to be a pizza delivery driver for a pizza place near where I lived. I lived with my parents and was still in high school at this time. So mostly I would work on weekends, but some weeknights as well. One time I was working a Friday night and we stayed open really late, so I would work longer shifts on those nights. This was after I had the job for a few months and had pretty much gotten used to things. When I went out for a delivery at about 11 p.m., I left the pizza place, and I remember I was seemingly followed. The roads were pretty quiet with it being 11 o'clock at night. So when I was driving to the address, probably just a few minutes into the drive, I noticed headlights behind me. I didn't think much of it until they were still there when I was approaching the address to make the delivery. So when I got to the street for the delivery, the car was still there. I pulled over to the side of the road in front of the house that I was delivering to. It was pretty much just a regular residential street. The car behind me continued down the street as I pulled over. This made me feel a lot better. Then I got out and delivered the pizza. I got back into my car afterwards and then I started to drive back to work. I turned around and headed back down the street. But when I got to the end of the street, I saw headlights behind me again. It was probably the same person. They ended up following me almost all the way back to the pizza place, except they randomly turned away within a few minutes of it. I was able to get back, but I found the whole thing very strange. I had no idea why anybody would be following me like that. I had another delivery to make a short time later. During this one, I got followed again, this time for just part of the way. I remember seeing the headlights again, and they started to follow me. I didn't know what I was going to do. But then, within just a few minutes, the headlights were gone. I made the rest of the delivery and back without any problems. The next delivery was completely fine. I didn't notice myself being followed at all. But the one after that, the car returned. By now, it was well after midnight. This time was very similar to the first. The car followed me almost the entire way to the house and back, but not quite the whole way. Then I had my final delivery of the night. For this one, I did not see the car at all, and I felt slightly better about that. I was back at the pizza place for a short time after that, and then I got off of work. I left work and started driving back home. Unfortunately, when I was a few minutes into the drive home, the car showed up again. When I saw it, I had a terrible feeling because I didn't want it to follow me to my house. I remember that I tried calling my parents, but it was really late and they were both already asleep. I didn't know what else to do. The drive back home took maybe 10 minutes, and the car followed me the whole way. When I was approaching my street though, I first turned onto it. My plan was to go around the block a few times and see if the car would keep following me. But when I first turned, the car behind me did not. Then I was able to drive the rest of the way home and pull into the driveway. I kept looking around, careful that the car would return, but I did not see it. I quickly went inside after that. I was not followed like that the entire rest of the time that I worked at the pizza place. I still don't know who was following me that day or why. A couple of years ago, I was at home by myself one night. It had been a long day of work, and I was happy to be back home. I lived in a smaller house that I was renting, which I moved to because of my work. On this night, I ordered a pizza online and was going to have it delivered. A while later, the doorbell rang, and I knew that was the pizza, so I went to the front door and I opened it. A man was standing there with the pizza, and I took it from him and gave him his tip. Before I closed the door though, the man asked me if he could come inside and use my restroom. Now, I really don't know why, but I said yes. I didn't want to say yes. I didn't want the guy in my house because I didn't know him at all. And obviously, I should not have let him. I don't really have an excuse or an explanation, but I guess it was just a reaction to say yes, so I did. The guy didn't immediately come across as strange or anything, so I told him that it was just down the hall and to the left. The house was not that big, and it was pretty easy to figure out where everything was. So the guy went down the hall and into the bathroom. I was slightly nervous because I didn't know him at all, but less than a minute later, he left the bathroom and then walked back to the front door. Then he left. After that, I was able to have my pizza. However, hours later, I was still up. I was just relaxing in the living room, and it was probably around midnight. Suddenly, there was a knock on my front door. I didn't know who it could possibly be at this hour. I walked over to the door and looked through the window. It was the pizza delivery guy from earlier, but he was not in his pizza uniform anymore. When I looked at him through the window, he saw me. After seeing that he noticed me, I felt like I had to answer. So I opened up the door and was really curious to see why he was here. The guy told me that he had just gotten off of work, and he realized that he dropped his wallet in my house. When he said this, instantly I was suspicious. He asked if he could come inside and look for it. Now, I had been inside for a few hours and didn't see a wallet. Plus, I had been to the bathroom and never saw it there either. I was sure that I would have. I told the man that I didn't think it was here, but I could quick look for him. He said no, he knew where it was and he knew that it was here. So I started to ask him where it was, but he then just walked right into my house. He said he would just be a second. The man blew past me and went towards the hallway. Then I watched him enter the hallway, but instead of going to the bathroom, he went into my bedroom, which was directly across from it. He then closed the door and I heard it lock. I started to walk over there and I said that was not the bathroom, but he didn't answer me. By now, I had a really bad feeling about this. I had no idea what was going on or what he was doing. I called out to him several more times, but he said nothing in response. After a few more minutes of me being very confused, I decided to call the police. I dialed 911 and told them of the exact situation. Then I waited. I went near the front door of the house and did not want to go near my bedroom. The entire time, the man stayed there and I didn't hear him at all. The police were pretty quick to arrive and I met them outside. Then they entered my house. Sometime later, they came out with the man. He had been found hiding in my bedroom and was refusing to leave. I'm glad that I called the police on him. I really don't know what exactly he was doing. I'm sure that he probably got fired from the pizza place after that as well, but I still haven't ordered from there since. years ago, I was living in New Jersey and I worked as a pizza delivery driver. I worked at this neighborhood joint called Domino's. The shop was at this corner on the edge of town. The area would be pretty busy during the day, but not so much at night. Obviously, we were open pretty late with it being a pizza shop. One time, I was working until 2 a.m. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, there was a delivery for me to make. I was sitting inside the shop, and I left out the back door to go to my car. I parked in the small lot behind the place, which was where employees would park. So I walked out the back door, and as soon as I did, I saw this guy standing near my car outside. He started moving away, and I asked him what he was doing. The guy quickly moved behind a couple of dumpsters that were back there. He had gone out of sight as quickly as I had seen him. I figured that he had left the property and went into the alley behind the dumpsters. I just know that I couldn't see him anymore. I went to my car and didn't notice anything out of place. I went inside my car with the pizza and then left to make the delivery. I was able to do so without a problem. After getting back from the delivery, I went back inside. A while later, I got my next delivery to be made. I left through the back door again. This time when I left, I did not see anybody by my vehicle, but when I was walking towards it, about halfway there, and I heard footsteps behind me, I looked back and noticed the same guy. He was walking in my direction. I went faster and got inside my car with the pizza. The guy kept going towards my car quickly. I thought that he was either going to try to get in my car or talk to me, and the way he had been at my car earlier made him seem really suspicious. He got within a couple of feet of me, but did not try opening my door or knocking on my window. He just kind of stood there. I didn't wait around to see what he wanted, and I started up my engine and quickly left. I went out and made the next delivery. I was gone for probably about 15 minutes or so. Then I went back to work again and parked in my usual spot. After getting out of my car, I was starting to walk back to the back door, but I quickly noticed that the man was still there. He came out from behind a nearby vehicle of a coworker. He was then standing near the back door to the place. I didn't know what he wanted, and I decided to walk away. Instead of going to the back door like I usually did, I went around on the edge of the parking lot. I then walked around to the front door, which was locked by now. I rang the bell and a coworker saw me and unlocked the door. I quickly went inside and told them about the sketchy guy. We ended up calling the police to report him, and nobody left the store until they arrived. They checked out the area, but the man had gone by then, I guess, because they couldn't find him. After a while, they left. I got another delivery that night and didn't see him at all. That was the creepiest thing that ever happened when I worked there. This happened back in the year 1996. I was 13, and one night I was at home with my older sister, who was 16 at the time. I remember that our parents were gone for the night, so they gave us some money to order a pizza. After our parents left, I went into my room to play video games, and my sister was in her bedroom. When I got hungry, I left my room and I told my sister that I wanted pizza then. So we ordered, and I'm not sure what time it was, but it was dark out. While we waited for the pizza, we hung out in the living room. Then I remembered that the pizza guy got there. After he rang the doorbell, my sister went over and answered and paid the guy. She then brought the pizza into the kitchen. I was still in the living room watching TV, but I was about to go into the kitchen. As I got up, I heard somebody suddenly trying to open the front door to our house. I stopped where I was and listened. They tried opening the door again. I wasn't sure if it was the pizza guy or what. I went over to the front window and looked out of it. I was just on time to barely see somebody moving away. They went out of sight within a second though, and I really didn't see anything. It was just enough to know that somebody was there. The person had gone to the side towards the driveway, but also towards the side of our house. I kept watching, but I did not see them return. I figured they had left, so I then went into the kitchen, and I remembered that I told my sister about it. We looked out of a few windows but didn't see anything, and figured that the guy had left. So we went into the living room and were having pizza and watching some TV. But not long into this, and then there was a knock at the front door. We carefully went over to a front window and looked out of it. When we did, we saw that there was this guy standing there on the front step. It was not the pizza delivery guy from earlier. Neither of us recognized him, and we figured that it was the same guy who had tried entering the house. We didn't know what we should do. I wanted to call our parents, but they didn't have cell phones at the time. So we stayed in the living room and heard the guy knock once more. Then he stopped. Things were very quiet for a short time. We looked out again, and the guy was now gone and we couldn't see him. However, just moments later, we heard somebody try opening the back door to the house. Whoever this guy was, he seemed to be determined to get into our house for some reason. My sister said she was calling the police and then went over to the home phone. I stayed in the living room and hoped that the man would not try to break in. While my sister was on the phone, I didn't hear anything more. After she was told that the police were on their way, we looked out of a few more windows. We did not see the guy in the backyard or the front yard. Probably 10 minutes later, the police got there. We figured that the guy had left. I remember just hoping that he wouldn't return after the police had went away. My sister mostly talked to the police and said what happened. I also talked to them a little bit too and gave my accounts. They said they would look around our property, and surprisingly, the police found a man hiding behind a tree in our backyard. It was the same guy. I really couldn't believe that he was still there. The police arrested the guy for trespassing. Neither me or my sister had any idea who he was. I'm really glad that they found him. I'm a former pizza delivery driver. I got the job when I was 20 years old, and at first, I liked it a lot. I would not have to work that much, just a few nights a week. My car was fairly new, and I didn't mind delivering at all. The area that I live is not super crowded, so the driving is pretty easy on the roads, and I would also make lots of money in tips, so it was well worth it. After I had been working there for about 6 months, I was working one weekend pretty late. It had been a busy night. I remember going on countless deliveries, but making quite a bit of money. It got late and the deliveries slowed down significantly. I was sitting inside of the restaurant when we got another order for me to deliver. By now, it was probably like 1 something in the morning. It was an order of just cheese bread. I took the order, got the address, and then headed out to my car to deliver it. I had been to this area before, but not the exact street or address. The location was about 10 minutes away, and when I arrived, I saw that it appeared to be a pretty typical house. I was on a residential street and I parked on the side of the road. I walked up to the house with the cheesy bread. When I got to the front door though, I noticed there was a note taped to it. It said, "Please use back door." When I saw this, I'm not going to lie, I got a little bit of a bad feeling. But I knew that there was probably a logical explanation. Maybe the door didn't work or there was too much junk in front of it. The reason for my bad feeling was probably just because it was so late at night and really dark out. So I walked around the side of the house and then went into the back. I looked around for the back door and then was able to find it. I walked up to it and knocked. Then I waited. For about 30 seconds or so, there was nothing. I was about to knock again, but then I thought I heard some footsteps inside. I waited, and then the door opened up, but I didn't see anybody. It was like whoever opened up the door had stayed behind it and then moved out of the way quickly. Inside of the house, it was completely dark. Not a single light was on. I was very confused. I did not go inside, but kept standing there, and I announced that I was there from the pizza place. I did not get a response at all in return, though. As I waited there by the open door, I was wondering what I should do. The bread was not paid for, so I couldn't just leave. As I continued waiting, a short time later, I thought I heard the sound of the front door to the house open and close. I couldn't be sure, though. I asked if anybody was there. I knew that somebody had opened the door for me and seemingly wanted me to go inside, but I certainly was not going to do that. So I just kept standing there. Then I noticed some movement to my right and sort of behind me. I looked, and there was a man standing there. He was at the entrance of the backyard and sort of on the side of the house. But this man was wearing a ski mask over his face. I was really creeped out as soon as I saw him. Then he started to walk towards me. When that happened, I knew that I had to get out of there. I just set the box of bread down and took off running. I went back around the house away from the guy. Then I ran to my car, got inside, and drove away from there. I went back to work, and I told my coworkers all about it. They all found it very amusing and seemed to think that it was funny. However, I was completely terrified. So much so that I only worked there for about another month. Then I quit and I got another job. I still think about that from time to time. Was it some crazy prank, or did the man have bad intentions? I really don't know. I was a pizza delivery driver during the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. During that time, I lived at home with my parents and worked at one of the pizza restaurants that was close by. Not too long after I started, though, I had a creepy experience. I was still pretty new to the job, and it was fairly late at night. I got a delivery, and it was probably like my 10th delivery of the night. When I got the pizza, I went to my car and started driving to the address. I drove a typical 4-door sedan and didn't mind all the driving required with the job. The address for the pizza was not a place that I had been to before. I knew the area pretty well, and we were close to a large city, so there were a lot of places there. It took me about 10 minutes to get where I was supposed to go. By the time I got there, I was very confused. There didn't appear to be any building. I had been expecting a house, maybe an apartment, or even a business of some sort. There was literally no building though. It appeared as though I was at some park. I was on a quiet road, and on both sides of it was just grass and thick woods in the distance. There were a couple of park benches on the grass, and a path going into the woods. There was also a small, empty parking lot nearby. I looked around for a building, but there was none. According to my map, I had arrived. I guessed it was possible that somebody ordered a pizza to the park, but I didn't see anybody there. Plus, it was almost 11 p.m., which was a really strange time to be getting pizza delivered to the park, if you ask me. I wasn't really sure what to do. I thought about calling my boss. My car was sitting on the side of the road, and no other cars were in sight. I got out and took a few steps out, looking around. Then, I heard a noise. It was a whistling sound made by a person. The sound was coming from inside the woods. It was just farther than where the path entered the woods, and it was very dark over there. It gave me the creeps when I heard it. I figured whoever that was must have been who ordered the pizza. Things could not have seemed any sketchier. I took a few steps on the path in the direction of the woods. There was no way that I was going into the woods though. I stopped and then set the pizza down on the grass a short ways off the path. Then I walked back to my car and got inside. I sat there and rolled down my driver's window. Then I watched to see if somebody would get the pizza that I just sat on the ground. Nothing happened for a few moments. I then yelled out that the pizza was here. It was so quiet that I was sure they would hear me. At first, nothing happened though. Then somebody shouted from inside the woods to bring it to them. It wasn't a friendly tone at all. Kind of angry actually. I didn't know what to do. I was thinking of what I should say and was about to say something back, but I was interrupted with the sight of somebody emerging from the woods. I couldn't see him very well, but I could tell that it was a man. After taking a couple of steps, he started sprinting out of the woods in my direction. I quickly put my car into drive and sped out of there. I didn't look back and went all the way back to the pizza place. I told my boss about it, but he didn't seem to think that it was so crazy. I, on the other hand, still think it was extremely creepy. The way he was just hiding in the woods was really weird. I'm not sure what exactly he was doing out there. After that, I only worked for a couple of more months as a pizza delivery driver. I recently quit my job as a pizza delivery driver. I'm going to tell you why. I originally got the job like 6 months ago. At first, it was pretty cool and I didn't mind it. Most of the deliveries were all in the same general area and the pay was good. I would get a lot of money in tips, plus I didn't have to work too many hours. Sometimes delivering pizzas really late at night, I would drive on some really quiet roads. It always felt a little bit spooky, but obviously nothing actually scary ever happened. But then one night, about 2 weeks ago, that changed. I was working late one weekend. The pizza place that I worked at is open until 3 a.m. on Friday and Saturday nights. During the last hour or two, we don't get a whole lot of orders, but it always surprised me how many that we did get. At about 2:30 in the morning, I had to deliver a pizza. I put the pizza in my car and left the restaurant.
Driving to the address took me almost 10 minutes, and when I got to the neighborhood, everything seemed typical. The streets were very quiet, and it was really dark out with it being the middle of the night. When I reached the house, it was about halfway down a standard residential street in the middle of the neighborhood. I parked my car on the side of the street, just in front of the front yard. Then, I got out of my car and walked up the driveway to the path leading up to the front door. Things were very quiet. I rang the doorbell, but did not get an answer right away. All of the lights inside the house appeared to be off. It was kind of strange. I started to get a bad feeling for some reason. I knocked on the door and waited. About 10 or 20 seconds went by, and then I heard movement inside the house. Then, the front door opened. A man was standing there. He had on sunglasses and a hat, which I found weird, but overall I didn't really care. The guy took the pizza, just said thanks, and then shut the door. I started walking back, but as I did, I immediately heard a noise coming from near the garage of the house. It sounded as though somebody was slowly opening it manually. I had to walk right past it to go down the driveway. I began to take a few steps in the direction, but then heard more noise. I had a bad feeling, and couldn't see the garage exactly from where I was. Without giving it much thought, I turned and began walking right through the front yard to get back to my car. The lawn wasn't perfect by any means, so I didn't think they would care too much. But as I started to, I heard the noises again, followed by immediate footsteps headed in my direction. It sounded like two people were walking after me. As soon as I heard that, I started running for my car. I did not stop to look back. I hit the unlock button as I was about 10 feet away, and then ran around to my driver's door and got inside. I locked the doors and started the engine. Nobody was standing around my car. I put my car into drive and stepped on the gas pedal. As I was driving down the street, I then saw headlights of a car that was parked in the driveway turn on. Shortly after I passed, I saw the car pulling out onto the street behind me. I realized that whoever had been walking after me must have gotten inside that car. The car followed me for the first few turns back to the pizza place. I had a really bad feeling about it. Our two cars were basically the only ones on the road I saw for the entire way back. I saw maybe one or two others. When I made it back to the pizza place, I wasn't quite sure what to do. Should I drive around more, or should I just go there? I was being followed by these guys, and I took a lap around the block with the car following me the entire time. I then decided that I would just go there. I pulled into the parking lot, and surprisingly, the car did not pull in after me. I was really glad to see that. I parked, got out, and went back inside. When I did, I told my boss about what had happened. He was glad that I was all right. I was getting off of work very soon, and I didn't end up needing to make another delivery that night. When it was 3 a.m., we closed, and I was done. I was tired and said bye to my boss and left. I got back inside my car to drive home. When I pulled out of the pizza restaurant parking lot, I saw lights turn on from a car parked across the street. The pizza place that I worked at was on a corner, and there were a few other businesses with parking lots across the street and down the street. The car was in one of the parking lots, and it then pulled out behind me. I was being followed again. I really didn't know why anybody would do this. As I was being followed, I drove my way home and hoped that the car would stop following me soon. I was thinking of what I could do. Obviously, I didn't want to drive all the way back to my place being followed, but still, I didn't know what could be done. It was after 3 a.m. and there was no traffic. It would be nearly impossible to lose a tail. My place was a little over 10 minutes away. I got closer and closer and couldn't really think of any ideas. I would have to keep driving because there was no way that I was going to my place. When I got about 3 minutes from home, I saw a police car. It was parked on the side of the road in a small parking lot. I always would see police cars there when I came home from work late at night. It was a common place for them to sit and patrol the area. I had forgotten about it though. Right after I passed it by, I got the idea to drive over to it. I slammed on my brakes and the car behind me, still following, did the same. I then made a U-turn and the car did as well. Then I pulled into the parking lot that the police car was in. The car behind me started to, but then peeled away and kept going in the other direction. I pulled up right next to the police car and parked. I spoke with the officer and told him what was going on. He then said that he would drive around the area and see if he could find the car, but if I saw the car again, I should call the police. I then drove the rest of the way home and did not see the car. The whole experience really creeped me out. I decided to put in my 2 weeks after that and get a new job elsewhere. I'm glad I don't have to work those late nights anymore. This story takes place last year. My name is Brooke, and I was with my best friend Rachel. We were both at my house one Friday night. It was probably 9 p.m. Rachel and I are coworkers, as well as best friends, and we had both worked late that night. After a long week, we were having a movie night and decided to order a pizza. We ordered from one of our favorite local places online, and then waited for it to arrive. I remember that a while later, I heard the doorbell ring. I got up and walked over to the front door. I remember thinking that it was unusually fast for the pizza to arrive. Rachel even said something about it being really fast. When I opened the front door, I was expecting to see the pizza delivery guy, but what I saw instead was a man standing there with no pizza. He didn't look like a delivery driver at all. I immediately closed the door right in his face. I didn't give him a chance to speak or do anything. I walked back over to Rachel and told her that some random guy was there. At this hour, it was really weird for somebody to be at the door, and I usually never got people at my front door anyways. We both looked out the window and saw no car in the driveway. We didn't see the guy walking down the driveway or street either. I was afraid that he had gone around to the side or hid in the bushes or something. We looked out a couple of different windows, but didn't see anything. Only a couple of minutes later, though, we heard a noise coming from the backyard. We couldn't tell exactly what it was, or if we were just being paranoid. We looked out a back window, but didn't see anything. Then, the doorbell rang again. We both carefully walked over and looked out the window. We saw a different guy standing there, holding a pizza, and had a hat on of the pizza company that we ordered from. This was clearly the pizza guy. I walked over and opened the door for him. After I got the pizza, I asked the delivery guy if he had seen anybody walking around my front yard. He looked confused and said no. We watched him go back to his car and then leave. When we heard that, we felt a little bit better. We then started the movie in the living room. But only about 10 minutes into the movie, we heard the doorbell ring again. Instantly, we knew it had to be that one guy again. I got up and walked over to the window. I very slowly and carefully peeled back the curtain to look. I saw the same man who had been there before, and he was staring right at me. I jumped back and ran into the living room. Rachel suggested calling the police, and honestly, I should have done it right then and there, but I'm sad to say I didn't. I just didn't think we could call the police on somebody for knocking on my door twice. Just because it was nighttime doesn't make it a crime. We had no proof that he had gone in the backyard, and the noises we heard could have been anything from the wind to an animal to just us being paranoid. I went back over to the window and looked out of it again. The man was now gone. I just barely saw him walking down the end of the driveway and into the street. I once again felt relieved. We unpaused the movie and went back to eating our pizza. Unfortunately, this didn't last for very long. Maybe 10 minutes after that, the doorbell rang once again. We paused the movie and looked at each other in disbelief. Why was this guy ringing the doorbell so much? I decided that this time I was going to answer the door and see what he wanted. But as I was walking over there, I heard a noise outside. And when I got to the door, I looked out, and the man was not on the front step anymore. Instead, he had gone to the side and in the front bushes area. I just barely saw him moving over there. I wasn't sure why exactly he would go there. It became apparent that the man was now hiding in the bushes. That was it for me. I was going to call the police. I called and then explained what had happened. In the meantime, we kept an eye out to see if the man would leave. He was still hiding in our yard somewhere in the bushes. I was told that somebody would be there shortly. Maybe 2 minutes later is when there was a sudden banging noise on the window. It was the living room window, a little to the left of the place that we had been looking out of. We both moved to the opposite side of the house to continue waiting. It was really freaking us out. The banging on the window stopped and we waited back there. But only a few moments later, there was a sudden banging on one of the back windows not far away. He must have known that we moved to the back. We then ran off to hide in a closet that was not immediately near any side of the house. We waited there and occasionally heard bangs on the windows. At last, we stopped hearing it. The police had arrived. We emerged to find that they had caught the man on my property and he had been located in the backyard. I really don't know why he was messing with us. I didn't know the guy and had never seen him before. Neither did Rachel. We were just happy that he was gone. I worked as a pizza delivery driver a few years ago. One night, I was working a late night shift. I made a few deliveries, and I remember at about 10 o'clock, I had to deliver one for the street that I lived on. At the time, I was 17 and lived with my parents on a long street in a neighborhood. It was pretty close to the pizza place, and I was excited to deliver to my street. I thought maybe it was one of the neighbors that I knew. I was friendly with a good number of them, although there were quite a few houses on our street, and I didn't know them all. Besides my own address, I didn't know anyone else's address on my street by heart, so I didn't know who exactly it would be. I got onto my street, drove past my house, and then further down. It ended up being a ways down the street, but when I arrived at the address, I was confused. This was a house that I knew nobody lived in. It was a well-known fact that the house was actually abandoned. I had to do a double take at the address to make sure that it was correct. It was in fact where I was supposed to deliver to. I looked at the house, and all of the lights appeared to be off. This seemed a little bit strange. However, I had a job to do. I got out of my car and walked up the driveway. When I got to the front door, I rang the bell. I heard the sound move throughout the house. Then I heard someone walking outside from the side of the house. I looked to my right and saw a man approaching. He walked over to me and said that he would take the pizza. The man then said that he had the money in the back. I asked the guy if he lived there. He said yes without hesitating. I knew that was a lie, and I was really suspicious, but I was following him. He said that he and some friends were hanging out in the backyard. I was walking really slowly as if I knew I shouldn't be going back there. The backyard appeared to be very wooded. I also didn't hear any noises at all coming from the back, and didn't see any light either. If there were people back there, I would have been able to tell. I made it about halfway back, but I had a really bad feeling. I knew that I shouldn't go any further, and I stopped. I turned around and started running for my car. When I got back to it, I got inside and drove away quickly. I went all the way back to the pizza place that I worked at, and I used my own money to cover the pizza that I had just delivered. I worked the rest of the night and went home later. When I got home, I asked my parents if anybody lived in that house, just making sure. They told me that it was still abandoned. I then told them about what had happened that night, and we actually drove by, but saw nothing. The lights were still off, and I didn't see anybody in the yard. I didn't have to deliver there again, but I still wonder what happened. I work as a pizza delivery driver. A couple of weeks ago, I was working at night and got what appeared to be a standard delivery. Without thinking much, I got the pizza that I was to deliver and went to my car. I drove to the address that I was supposed to go to. It took maybe 15 minutes to get to the address, and by the time that I got there, it was almost midnight. I parked, got the pizza, and headed up. When I rang the doorbell of the house, I noticed that the front door was already open. There was just a screen door that was closed. I looked inside the house. There was a hallway going forward and some stairs, and most of the lights appeared to be off. I heard a man's voice from inside somewhere ask if I had the pizza. I replied saying yes. Then the man said to come in and bring it back to the kitchen. The guy told me that he had broken his leg and was icing it. I opened the door and walked inside, although I had a bad feeling about it. I really didn't like walking into people's houses who I didn't know. When I got inside, I figured that I should walk down the hallway, but I looked around to make sure. There was a little foyer area in the entry. A staircase was a little bit to the left, then just a hallway going back with several doors to the right. The man had sounded like he was coming from down the hallway and to the left, so I'm guessing that's where the kitchen was. As I started to walk down there, suddenly the front door to the house behind me closed. It slammed shut violently. I looked back, but I couldn't see who had shut it. Whoever it was had done it from the outside. Then I heard some noises coming from the kitchen area. It sounded like somebody was now walking towards me. I quickly ran to the nearest doorway in the house and went inside. Then I closed the door behind me. To my surprise, it had a lock on it, and I locked the door. I was inside of a room that appeared to be a bedroom, and it was completely dark for the most part. I looked around and found a light switch. I turned it on, and I could now see the room better. Nobody else was in here, which was good. I heard the man walking down the hallway in my direction. I guess he didn't have a broken leg. He then tried opening the door to the room that I was in. I looked around the room, and I found a window. I needed to get out of there. I opened it from the inside and slid it up. There was just enough space for me to climb out of there. I could still hear the man trying to open the door as I climbed out. When I made it into the front yard, I heard more noises. There was somebody else outside in the yard, but they were a ways away. I sprinted back for my car, and at first heard whoever else was there running after me. I didn't stop and was able to make it to my car. I left and went back to the pizza place. I felt so happy to get out of there. My boss was really nice and didn't mind that I was unable to get the money for the pizza. I'm not sure what the plan was at that house, but I'm glad I was able to get away. I am a pizza delivery driver. This was by far the scariest thing to happen to me. It took place about 1 year ago. I was working on a Thursday night, which were usually decently busy. I made quite a few deliveries and the later it got, the more things calmed down. At about 1 in the morning, I got a delivery for a cheese pizza. I put it into my car and drove to the location, which was about 10 minutes away. It was in an area of town which I rarely delivered to and was a little more run down. I got to the address, which was a 2-story house with a pretty decent-sized yard and many overgrown plants and trees. It looked a little bit run down like most houses in the area and had a front porch that seemed to wrap around the house. I got out of my car, grabbed the pizza, and walked up the driveway to the house. Then I walked up the steps to the door and rang the doorbell. About 30 seconds went by, and I was about to ring the bell again when the door started to open. A man answered. He was fairly large and bald and looked to be in his 50s. He just stood there staring at me for a second. I said I had his pizza and handed it to him. He looked almost surprised and said, "Oh, okay, that's nice." Then he just looked around. He just seemed a little bit strange to me. Then he said to me that he had to get some cash to tip me and he would be right back. He went back inside and closed the door. I stood there waiting for a good 2 or 3 minutes, but the man still didn't return. I was thinking about just leaving when I heard some noise and figured the man must be coming back. But when I listened closer, it wasn't coming from inside. It was coming from outside on the porch. I looked around to the direction of the noise. Then I saw from the side of the house on the porch 3 men approaching me about 30 feet away. I guess it was just an instinct, but as soon as I saw them, I turned and sprinted back down the porch to the driveway. When I did, I heard all the men start to chase after me. I ran as fast as I could to my car and unlocked it and then jumped inside. I frantically started the engine and stepped on the gas. As soon as my car started moving forwards, the men reached me. I felt one of them kick my back door and another one tried opening the door on the other side, but I was just barely able to drive away. I sped out of the neighborhood and all the way back to the pizza place. I have to think that the pizza delivery was some sort of trap to lure me into getting robbed, or maybe even worse. I haven't delivered to that area much since, but when I do, I'm extra careful. I am a 21-year-old female. Around 3 years ago, when I turned 18, I decided to get a job as a pizza delivery driver. We lived in a small town, and there wasn't much, but there was a little pizza place. My older brother had worked there as a pizza delivery driver the year before. I went in one day to ask for an application to work there. The owner was a middle-aged man named Gary. He told me I was hired as soon as I asked for the application. I thought he must be joking, so I laughed, but then he said he was serious. I remember my brother had said that Gary was a little weird, but I didn't really mind as long as I had a job. I got trained the next week, and soon after was my first real day on the job. I was scheduled to work a night shift, and when I arrived, it was just me, Gary, and another kid that I went to high school with named Mike. Like I said, it was a small place and a small town, so it wasn't usually that busy. I waited around and swept the floors for a few minutes before an order for a delivery came in. How it would usually work is Gary would make the pizzas and then the drivers would deliver them. When the pizza was done, I was told to deliver it, so I took the address and then the pizza and got into my car. But when I did, Gary followed me. He told me he wanted to ride with me and make sure I did the delivery correct. I was a little annoyed because I knew I would get it right, and I didn't want him going with me. I thought it would be really awkward, and Gary just kind of gave me the creeps. He was the boss though, so I had to do what he told me to. I got in and drove to the address without a problem. Gary didn't really say anything during the drive, he just watched me. We arrived at the house and I got out and gave them the pizza. Gary stayed in the car and waited. When I got back to my car that was parked on the street, I saw that Gary was in the driver's seat now and was motioning for me to get in the passenger side. I got in and asked him why he was driving. He said he needed to show me something. I was getting a bad feeling, and I really didn't like Gary driving my car. I asked him again what he was doing,
this time with a more stern tone in my voice. But he didn't answer me this time and focused his eyes on the road. He started driving back, but then made a turn that I realized was not the right way to go back. Then Gary spoke, but his tone of voice changed. He said, "Just shut up." I knew then that I was in trouble. I feared for what Gary might do, and he was much bigger than me. He took a road that led more into the wilderness, and we drove for several minutes. Then I saw a stop sign coming up. I did just what I felt I had to do, and as soon as the car came down to a slow enough speed, I opened the door and got out, and then I ran as far away as I could. I started running in some grass and then sort of a wooded area. As I was running, I heard his door open, and I heard him shouting, but I couldn't understand what he was saying. That made me run even faster. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I needed to get away. I ran for as long as I could before running out of breath, and then I hid behind a tree. I didn't hear him or anything, so I decided to take out my phone and call my mother. I told her what had happened, and she had me turn my location on so she could pick me up. She arrived about 15 minutes later and then called the police. My car and Gary had both vanished. He ended up being found and arrested a week later. My car was found in his garage. His restaurant was shut down, and I ended up getting a job at a local grocery store instead. I recently moved across the country to a new town to go to school. I was able to land a job as a pizza delivery driver pretty easily. I've done this job before, and I like it because it's relatively easy and I make good money on tips. I work a lot of really late night shifts. A couple of weeks ago, I was working and at about 2 a.m. an order came in. It was for a large cheese pizza. At that hour, it was just a couple of us working, so I made the pizza myself and then put it in my car and went to deliver it. I didn't know the area very well, so I would always put the address in on my phone and then just follow the directions. I got in my car and typed it in. It said it was a 15-minute drive. As I drove, it seemed to be taking me into the middle of nowhere. I drove for about 10 minutes through woods with not a building or house in sight. Then finally, I was supposed to turn onto a little dirt road that I could barely see. If it hadn't showed up on my map, I would have almost certainly missed it. I slowed down and then turned onto the little dirt road. The map showed me continuing on this road for about 1 more mile, and then I would take a left, and the destination would be there. I began driving down the dirt road, which was surrounded by woods. Then suddenly, my phone lost signal. I wasn't all that surprised being so far out from the city, but I was concerned because I needed to find the house to deliver the pizza. I kept driving very slowly and looked for a road on the left side. Finally, I saw it and I turned. The road was another dirt one, but the woods on each side was even more dense. It was very eerie being out there on that road at that time of night, especially not knowing where I was. I drove down the road very slowly, looking on both sides for a house or some kind of building for whoever ordered a pizza out here. But all I saw was trees from the dense woods and some grass. I still had no service at all on my phone, but I knew I had to be close to where the delivery was supposed to be. It was very dark and hard to see, with the only lights coming from my headlights. I wasn't seeing any kind of buildings at all. I started to get a really creepy feeling being out there, and after about 5 minutes of driving down that road looking, I decided to turn around and go back, because I could clearly see that there was no buildings. I drove my car back to the other dirt road, and then back to where I had signal before. At last, I was finally able to get connection on my phone, and when I did, I looked at the map again, but the address had been erased and it was not there. I found the card that I had wrote the address on and put it back into my phone, but this time it said address not found. I decided I would just head back and try to figure out what was going on. When I got back to the store, I showed my boss the address and told him what happened. He looked surprised when I gave him this information. Then he told me that there are no houses or buildings in that area at all.
I went back to look at the order that had come in, but it was gone. I chalked it up to a lack of sleep, but to this day, I really don't know how to explain what happened. Maybe I was just really tired, but it was still a really creepy experience.